It's free agency this week, and we're back at war. Just another week in the United States of America. Stick around if you want me to hear a little bit about me talking about the war. I don't have a whole lot to say. This is a sports podcast mainly, so we're going to do that first. I guess the main story this week is Maxx Crosby getting traded to the Ravens. The Ravens are truly going for it here. Like, this is a all-in, we have a lot of top-end players. We need to compete for a Super Bowl type move. Teams that have traded multiple first-round picks for players. Not a great history of that working out. The Rams obviously did it twice, and they got a Super Bowl out of it. They could get another one still with Stafford still around, and may turn into that for them. They've done it again. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The hit rate's not high, and I think it's mostly because to win a Super Bowl, you kind of need a balance of franchise quarterback play and roster balance. The Rams kind of built a decent roster through those trades and then drafted well, and then they traded for a quarterback to even make that better. So, I don't know, Baltimore has the quarterback. I don't know if they have the roster balance right now. Maxx Crosby makes them better. It will be interesting to see what happens. They should be a playoff team. When you get in the playoffs in the NFL, anyone can do anything, really, as long as you have a floor defensively and Lamar Jackson. The Raiders are getting a high pick to pair with Fernando Mendoza. That'll be fun. The responsible thing would be to take an offensive lineman with that pick, probably a tackle. There will be options for that. However, I do kind of think it would be interesting if they took one of those top receivers with the 14th pick. I think that would be a lot of fun. The Raiders they're in a spot. If they do the correct thing, big if, they could be winning some games soon. We'll just have to see. Speaking of the Rams, Trent McDuffie, first round pick sent from the Rams to Kansas City. They've done it again. F them picks, like people have said. Les Snead doesn't like first round selections. I think this is more of a reveal of the overrating of first round selections that people maybe have compared to the league. Second round picks are closer to first round selections than people think, and they're further away from third round selections than people think. Usually your first two picks are like starters for sure. When you start getting into that back end of day two, you're less likely to get starters out of like third round selections, and that's pretty common in most drafts. There's like 70 or so players that are like starter level or like all pro developmental type upside, if they're not starter level at the moment you draft them, type players. That's why like years back there was this thing, I'm not even going to find this tweet, but there was a study done like at the pick 39 and 40 by some analytics guy was worth the same as the 7th overall pick. And a lot of people got very mad about that. I don't think that's completely wrong. I bet if you look at 7th round pick history, the hit rate is probably much higher. Obviously, like that's not how this works. You know, a 7th overall pick is not measured just by how 7th overall picks have done. It's about, picks in that range and their consistency of hit rate. But I would bet that teams with multiple second round picks more often get a long-term starter out of that than teams with top 10 picks. And you can look no further than the fact that like teams that pick in the top 10 tend to stay picking in the top 10. They're not great for a reason. They don't draft that well. Obviously, teams that draft well, Howie Roseman, those teams tend to take advantage of any top 10 pick they will be given, which is why it's like very dangerous to do what Mickey Loomis and the Saints have done over these years, gifting the Eagles player after player after player. I hate Mickey Loomis. Like, I really do. Like I root for the Saints are fine. I have no problem with them, but just like, good God. This man is like directly responsible for the Eagles getting Jalen Carter, A.J. Brown, and Zach Vaughn. 3 players who will receive either Offensive Player of the Year or Defensive Player of the Year votes within their time in Philadelphia. Good job, Mickey. Anyways, Trent McDuffie, it was the big need for the Rams. I think you look at them right now, that's the best roster in football right now is Los Angeles. Like, I think right now they have to be early Super Bowl favorites. I think it's very up in the air. It could change. I still think the Rams' upside is higher than most teams, and I still think their floor is higher than most. So they're in a good spot. And McDuffie's a very good player. They're going to give him a massive extension. They gave up a lot for him. I think they can afford to. They're shooting the moon right now while they can still have a first round pick. If they want to trade back and get Ty Simpson, bet they could. As for the Chiefs, I like it. They have drafted decently, I think, in this era of football. They haven't paid the right guys, maybe, is probably more of the concern for them. But I do like them kind of allowing themselves more selections because they have found diamonds in the rough on days 2 and 3 in the past. Drew Dalman retires at age 27. The Bears promptly trade for Garrett Bradbury. I'm not the biggest Bradbury fan. I think he's a good run blocker. He fits the scheme. They'll run the ball well. Might give up some push and pass pro in the middle. I don't know if it's that big of a downgrade from Dalman, but it is a downgrade. You are seeing an increasing rate of players retiring younger and younger in the NFL, and I think that is alarming. It is a worthwhile thing to look at because this game is one that gives these guys generational wealth quickly. They're making college money in some cases that's generational, and these guys get really beat up. It's hard to really anecdotally explain how beat up NFL players get and just how taxing it is physically. I mean, if you want to see something gross, just look up like average offensive lineman's feet or something. It's not pretty. And it's understandable why someone would play 7 years, have a good year in Chicago and be like, I'm good. This is a tough sport. I don't really blame people for retiring young. DJ Moore gets traded to the Bills. Slight overpay maybe, a second round pick. What we talked about, these are valuable selections. They do get a fifth on the way back. The Bills do net players in this trade, which is very valuable. That's like the Howie Roseman trick. Get more players out of it. Howie will do something where he'll trade like a third and a second to move up in the second and receive a sixth and a fifth back, and it's like he had more picks and it's giving you more shots at it. It's just like, why would you do that? Smart thing to do. In this case, DJ Moore, I think probably can play better than he did this past season in Chicago. I think it is an upgrade for the Bills. I think they still need more at playmaker. As for the Bears, I think it was obvious they were going to move on from Moore. He wasn't a perfect fit in the Ben Johnson system. Burden, Odunze, and Colston Loveland were better weapons for them last year, quite frankly. Even Ja'Day Walker looked solid at times as a receiver, as a rookie who I believe was undrafted. And they can find somebody else in the draft with a mid-round pick and fit him in behind Burden and Odunze, and they'll have a good room. And getting another second-round pick to help the defense, which does need some support, is very valuable. So I think the Bears win that trade. I didn't completely dislike it from Buffalo because I do think they added weaponry and a player that I think they can use and get chunk plays out of. They need someone who can stretch the field. Like a Rashid Shaheed would be great for them. They'd be great for pretty much every team, but they need somebody else. And I know they just paid Josh Palmer, which is going to look silly in a couple years probably because I don't think he's the answer. Speaking of the Josh Palmer contract, Tyler Biadasz just got signed by the Chargers. These are cheaper contracts now. You get paid 3 years, $30 million. A couple years back, that was a starter and a solid starter. Now that's you're a starter, but you're on the clock though almost immediately. Most of those contracts, you can get cut pretty quickly on a 3-year deal if you're not playing the way people want you to. There's not many starters making less money on their second and third contracts than that these days. You're looking at guys like Owe and Alec Pierce getting paid probably in the $25 to $30 million a year range. These are guys that have had some really, really good years in the past, but as young players are still developing and haven't shown a consistency yet that maybe makes you want to pay top end money for those players. It's weird because $30 million a year 2 years ago was this is the best non-quarterback in football. And now I think it's going to be a pretty common number. So you're kind of seeing this emphasis of signing impact players over depth from NFL front offices that is tied to the immediate need to win. If you don't win now, you're getting fired, right? That's happening all across the sport. It's getting more hyper competitive. Analytics is speeding everything up. Got to sign players now while you have the money. Might as well fill out the roster because you need to win games. What have you done for me lately? As a Washington fan, 12-5, great season. Come back, 5-12, bunch of injuries. Got to spend that money because if things go poorly for Dan Quinn this year, he's probably gone. We'll talk about that more in a little bit because we'll do a whole DC sports thing, but that is a relevant topic. Last thing in terms of main stories, Stefon Diggs gets cut. I want to talk a little bit about reporting because I think this is a theme we're starting to see a little bit. Almost every reporter who talked about this cut talked about how he was not in the future plans with the contract, about how he wasn't really a locker room presence. Maybe they wanted it was maybe the furthest they would go. The off-field story was largely ignored. If you did not watch football this year, you just arrived in the United States, maybe you were on a year backpacking trip in the Arctic or something, you would not know about the Stefon Diggs off-field issues. They have to have played some part in this, in my opinion. Could be wrong. I guess the Patriots wanted to move on and find a receiver, but he played well this year. He was on an affordable deal. I can't really see a reason why they would make this decision unless that played into it. And I just think that there is a very obvious project to protect the shield here, shall I say, amongst reporters and insiders around the NFL. At all costs, protect the public relations of the league. And I kind of get that. They're all making money off of the fact that they get to cover football, but it does very much go against the idea of journalism, right? You have to be critical to some extent. And, New England held on to this guy through the playoffs. No one's expecting them to cut him during a playoff run because of what happened. There's no precedent for that. Really, NFL teams, have shown you they do not give a fuck about these off-field issues ever, really. The NFL will suspend guys sometimes, but even with someone like Rashee Rice, there's a question as to right now, how badly will he get suspended for all the things that have happened and continue to happen? Will he miss a full season? Will the Chiefs just cut him? Will he just get blackballed? I mean, there have been players who haven't done anything specifically bad outside of football that have been blackballed from the league just because they didn't like the public image it was creating, right? And so I think very obviously public image is first and foremost for the NFL right now, and reporters very much are a part of that, and they are working with front offices and agents and to some extent players to uphold that. And that's why when you see these Stefon Diggs has been released tweets, there's no reference to why this may be happening. And I wanted to talk about that because I think there is a giant connection to, by a certain Twitter account that goes by the name Rickey Scoops, that has been on it in terms of breaking news early about NFL free agency and trades and coaching moves and all sorts of stuff. He's an insider. I have my own theories, knowing the industry a little bit, like of what he actually is and where he gets his information from. And I'm pretty certain I know what this guy does, because it is kind of hard to be the type of person who gets that type of information, is able to release it, and nobody ever finds out. But we know the league and reporters are trying to figure out who it is. And I don't think it's because they want the information. I think it's because they want to communicate to this person to stop leaking information before front offices and agents say it's okay to. Because here's a little inside football thing here. Reporters, for the most part, know the news they are breaking weeks in advance, right? Schefter knows what's going on in free agency already. Tampering is so fake. Like we're going to get to Monday. It's going to be 12:01 p.m., first minute of legal tampering, and there's going to be 3 contracts signed already, and they're going to be huge, complicated deals, and you're going to be like, how did that happen? It's because they're tampering. We all know it's happening. But the NFL does want to protect the public image of the lack of tampering, which is why, like the Dolphins had a first-round pick taken away for talking to Tom Brady. There was a perception they were doing it. The NFL was like, well, gotta punish them. And so I think all major insiders, whether it be, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Jay Glazer, Diana Rossini, all of these people have information. They have it shared with each other. They have it shared with agents who give this out. They have it shared with whoever their sources are, which generally, again, sources are agents. They are front office members, maybe in some cases coaches, people a part of the football staff. This is as far as detailed as I'll get with it. They have info ahead of time. Like guys know, like you saw Lamar tweet the other day, Maxx Crosby. He didn't say Maxx Crosby, but he was celebrating that they got Maxx Crosby in Baltimore. That happened hours before the trade got released. And Lamar found that out a little bit after the trade actually had occurred. Like the trade occurred at least a day before Lamar found out, probably. So at the very least, we know the insiders knew about this trade a couple days in advance, probably. No one finds out about things before Schefter outside of the people doing the deal. And I guess Rappaport and others, whatever. Point being, we have a guy who's doing real reporting. Like he has information that other people don't have and is releasing information before it's coming out. Like this is what the news should be. And the league doesn't like it. At least they don't like it enough to try and get the person to kind of align with other reporters and tweet at the same time. They don't want news breaking 2 weeks before it's supposed to break. There's a very large control of the flow of information. And so really all I'm trying to say is I enjoy what this person's doing. I think Rickey Scoops is great. I continue to push people in that direction because I do think they know what they're talking about. They clearly have some inside information. They are connected to the league. They know what's going on. And this is real reporting. Like this is, even if they're not a reporter, this is a person that has got information and is sharing it under a guise, underground, and breaking news quite literally without this force of 5 people colluding to kind of release it at a certain time period when the NFL or the front office of an NFL team determines it's okay. And a big part of that is also about contracts. Agents want to communicate a certain way. They want it to look like their players are making more money than they are, blah, blah, blah. Point being, it's very silly, and the fact the league is bothered by this at all is somewhat problematic, I think. It's a freedom of the press thing, like quite frankly. Freedom of speech, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Weird things. That's it for main stories. I'm going to get into a DC sports talk here, so I'm sorry for people who just don't want to listen about DC sports talk, but it's going to happen now. First, I do want to say I'm taking a coaching job. I want to document that a little bit. I want to kind of talk about what coaching football is. So I'll try to do that on this a little bit more. Probably going to be some shorts on TikTok and stuff about it, but just something that I need to do a little bit more of, because I do think it's a world that people need to understand more than they do in terms of fans, because I think the lack of information, at least it bothers me. I don't know if it bothers other football people, but I would like, it's hard to kind of show what's going on in the world of football because it's a lot of secrecy for no reason, which is connected to all this. We need to open transparency a little bit more. All right, so this was not the biggest DC sports week. Maybe the biggest story, if you're a DC sports head, is John Carlson getting traded and the Capitals just kind of blowing it up. It is a interesting time for DC sports. It has not been a good start to the year. The Wizards are tanking. Next year could be very exciting for them, but obviously this year is not going to be it. The Capitals did not turn last year's successes into a long-term thing. thing. I still think their future is very bright, but they need a year of kind of removing some of the older players they have. It might be Ovechkin, maybe, and getting some of these young guys up and developing them and maybe chasing their top 6 forward to really boost their offense. That, along with some of the Commanders' moves, cutting Tyler Biadasz, a little confusing, not re-signing Chris Paul, we're going to see what they do. There's a lot of buzz about them spending a lot of money in free agency. They need to go and get guys. Like, they might offer a lot of money, but they actually need to sign guys for this to be worthwhile for me to consider them like competitive this season. But considering the Nationals will be bad in all likelihood, we're looking at a year of DC sports here where the only team that has a chance of being a playoff team probably is the Commanders. And historically, that's just like not really a spot we want to be in at all, quite frankly. I feel better about the Commanders than I did in the Snyder era. I just haven't been convinced yet that this is like going to work for sure, let's just say. And considering nobody made the playoffs last year outside of the Capitals, it has been about a year since we've had any playoff DC sports. So I'm hoping this does not turn into a little bit of a drought. It's not fun to have bad sports teams, basically. Nick Dowd was also traded, another like long-term piece that was not a part of the Stanley Cup team, but like between him and Jay Beagle, like long-term great fourth-line center play from the Caps. Something that will be hard to like get used to not having. Kind of reminds me of when Trent Williams left and we had Chris Samuels and then Williams right in a row. And now we're back with Leonard Tunsil, so eventually you get back to it, right? Dietrich Wise, Andrew Wiley, Drake Jackson, all back in DC, solid depth, Traylon Burks. They bring these guys back again. Like the big signings are what's going to matter, but last year Dietrich Wise was like a starting edge player for them for 2 games, and he was fine before he like really injured his leg. He ideally is like your edge 4, right? Like you don't want him to be your edge 2. They need to sign a couple more guys. That is something I'm hoping for. The key to pass rush has long been depth. Like, yes, you want one guy who can be dominant. You know, Dortz Armstrong could be that. He was very good last year before his ACL tear, but that's another part of this is he tore his ACL. Can't trust anybody coming off an ACL tear, quite frankly, immediately. You need multiple guys in that pass rush room. And Dietrich Wise is more of a big body edge setter who's better against the run. Like, they need pass rushers. They need to sign a couple and draft one, quite frankly. Like, they need to have guys in the room who can get after the quarterback. If they don't, it's going to be a long year. And I think that they will chase some talent. There's a lot of people have said this is a bad free agency. I think most free agency cycles are not great. I think this is actually a more talented free agency cycle than you usually get, where there's a lot of young athletic guys who still could be developed and turned into good players. And those are kind of the guys you pay because there's usually some like older veterans who are like good players, but they're cheaper now because they're in their 30s. Those guys are fine. And then there's guys who just haven't played well who have some promise. And that's a little more like the Javon Kinlaw signing where it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how I feel about it. So the expectation is some fireworks from the Commanders in free agency, and we'll have to see if they deliver on that. A lot of people are very impatient with the current regime. Dan Quinn, again, I think he's on the hot seat entering the season. That's just the way the league is now. I will say Adam Peters is absolutely not on the hot seat, and that's not me saying, oh, Adam Peters has done a great job. I think he's done a good job. I think he's been the best GM we've had, and that's not saying much in like the last 30 years. But really, it's more, again, about the state of the league. He will get a second head coach. That is the rule. The league is about hiring dudes who run front offices and change out staff until we decide that they're done. It's like very hierarchy focused. Like the one guy at the top, Adam Peters, is the main plan for Josh Harris and the Commanders right now. Until they lose focus in Adam Peters as the guy, they're going to allow him to churn through staff and figure it out. And usually the rule, again, is you get 2 head coaches as a new GM. And so he's still in the first guy. Let's say it flames out this year. They fire Dan Quinn. Most head coaches these days, when your roster has any amount of talent, get at least 2 years. I don't think this is like a Titans situation where the next coach comes in and gets fired immediately. They're, quite frankly, Jaden Daniels is too good for that to happen, I think. Knock on wood. He's got to stay healthy. And they have some other talent as well. You know, it would have to be Dan Quinn flaming out, getting fired, hiring a new coach who also doesn't work, 2 bad years, he gets fired. The minimum Adam Peters firing timeline is October of 2028, really. And I know a lot of people like who are already against Peters don't want to hear that. That's the truth. October 2028 is the earliest he could be gone. Personally, I think it's a little silly to be all over him. I think he's had one really good offseason and one kind of aggressive offseason that didn't work out. And I'm willing to see what they do this offseason and make a judgment going into the year of where they will be. Again, in a very competitive conference, I don't really know how good their chances are of really competing. Daniels has to be healthy. I reviewed his tape last year. Thought he was really good, actually. So we'll have to see. Again, the ability for him to learn, mature, protect himself, as well as moving to an offense that I think, quite frankly, like will protect him better than the Cliff Kingsbury offense did, should help. Should is never a guarantee in the NFL, though. All right, I got some like throwaway stories. I'll just add in here at the back end. So Aaron Rodgers is non-committal on his retirement. I mean, it's so funny, like the parallels between him and Brett Favre, like they're very similar. We don't know when he's going to retire. He's playing the media game. He may or may not. He might go play for God knows who. If I were to make a prediction right now, like I think he retires. Like you would have thought like a couple years ago, like he hated Mike McCarthy's guts. Like there's no way he'd go back to Pittsburgh and play for him. Just a strange situation, really, overall. I think he can still play if he wants to. It's more that it's just kind of a unique media moment where you just don't really know where this one guy's mind is at when you're usually used to understanding, to some extent, what everyone's thinking due to the information flow. The Colts are transition tagging Daniel Jones. He is their quarterback. There are some weird rules with that one where a contract can be given to Jones. They can match it. If they don't, I think they get draft picks, I believe. I don't expect anyone will give him a massive contract and draft picks to try and keep him. It would be surprising if that were the case. That means Alec Pierce is a free agent, and we're really going to get a look at like what this like high-end market player who isn't like a high-end player looks like, where I think Alec Pierce is very good, but he's not like a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. I think maybe he's top 20, right? Like a lot of good teams, like he's a wide receiver 2 on the Commanders right now. I like Terry McLaurin a lot. I think he's getting older. Pierce eventually would be your 1. He's probably the 1 on the Bills. He's probably better than DJ Moore, but like debatable. I could see Moore being a better player next year. Just with a new scheme and his abilities, like I could see Moore becoming a 1,300-yard receiver again. It wouldn't surprise me. And Alec Pierce had his breakout last year. Like he hasn't played the way he had last year before last year, along with Michael Pittman injuries and a breakout Colts offense. Like a lot of things went their way. So we'll see. I mean, he might get $30 million a year. That would be wild to me, but it's just, again, the way the league is going. Kyler Murray, Geno, free agents, Tua, is going to be made available. Apparently teams want them to like give picks to get rid of him. Maybe he just plays for the Dolphins this year. That's a weird situation. The quarterback market kind of changing too now. Like it used to be like if you were at all a franchise type guy in a system that you had created with a coach that you liked, like you would just pay the guy $50 million. I think we're kind of seeing some changes now where a secondary market might be emerging because of some of the failures here. Not necessarily of these players, but like of the systems that were built around them. The Cardinals, Dolphins, and Raiders just weren't very good. And it was not entirely on the quarterback, but to some extent it was on the quarterback. I think there are teams, Steelers, Vikings, Colts, if they don't get Daniel Jones, who have rosters and systems in place that like if you put a Geno or a Kyler in there, or maybe even a Tua, they could win a lot of games. So the question of like what a quarterback is worth in terms of cap space is going to get more complicated as time goes on, obviously. The Cowboys restructure a bunch of contracts. Tyler Smith, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, they get over the cap. They were deep in the cap negative. It was a problem. Now they have like no money, but they're over the cap. And Jerry Jones said they're going to take a big swing. With what money? I don't know. I guess they could restructure more guys. I haven't really looked at the details of that. This is not the first time Jerry Jones has said we will take a big swing. Last year it happened. They didn't really take a big swing. Their big swing was trading away Micah Parsons and then trading for Quinn Williams at the deadline. So, the Cowboys are entering kind of the U.S. government stage of messaging where it's like they just say things and you really should take them with a grain of salt because Jerry Jones is senile. Like, he's there to like represent the team, but like Stephen Jones is probably running the show. They have a coach, Schottenheimer, they trust, who's probably helping out. They could do anything. It wouldn't shock me. Like they were in on Maxx Crosby. They almost traded for him. They just didn't want to give up 2 first-round picks, which was almost certainly about, not wanting to give up the Micah Parsons package for a player that's not as good as Micah Parsons. Although they are both very good edge players. I think they could win this year. I wouldn't be shocked by anything with them. It's just the Cowboys are so strange. Like they're prioritizing entertainment value. So like saying things is valuable. Saying we're going to have fireworks like every time the camera's on Jerry Jones is worthwhile for them. Even if there aren't fireworks, just be like, yeah, there's fireworks, and like applaud because fireworks are cool, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to finish off talking about the Iran war, and I have a couple things. Like, I'm just like anti-war in general, so I don't really want to get into like the politics of it like too deeply, but because I know, even saying that, like some people already are probably going to be like, oh. But I will say, like, watch oil prices. They just spiked big time. They're at 91.27 right now, I think. I don't know that number exactly for no reason. It is the weekend, so the markets are closed. If that number approaches 120, which is around where it was during COVID, I believe, that's a problem, and it will approach that number. So just keep an eye out on that one. There are a few other things to look at as well, but that's like kind of the main like financial thing right now that you could say, right? I'm not a finance guy. I don't know a whole lot. I get good information from people who know more than I do. And I generally trust them. They do a good job. So that's my determination right now of where we are in terms of world politics, right? Thank you, Nick, for your wise information that will save no one in all likelihood, but whatever, take it what you will. Like and subscribe.